On the evening of May 1st, 2010, Susan Cox Powell, a 28-year-old mother of two, vanished without a trace from her home in West Valley City, Utah. Her disappearance has since become one of the most unsettling unsolved cases in recent history, with chilling details that continue to haunt investigators and the public alike. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Susan expressed fear for her safety, particularly regarding her husband, Josh Powell. On the night she vanished, Josh claimed he took their sons on an impromptu camping trip in freezing weather, a story that immediately raised suspicions. In the video released by Susan on July 29, 2008, she is recorded to cover all her bases in case anything happens to her or her family.
This is me, July 29th, 2008, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
Stephen lived much of his life with a camcorder in front of his face. He was prolific, filling boxes with VHS and Hi-8 videocassettes. Many of the recordings were mundane, documenting birthday parties, family trips, or conversations with relatives. Others were outright disturbing. Steve's lens often followed strangers in parking lots. He would record from the cover of his minivan with its tinted windows. His camera would zoom in on the bodies of women and girls without their knowledge. Susan Cox Powell, his daughter-in-law, was one of Steve's favorite subjects to film. When Josh first brought her home, I didn't think much of her, Steve Powell later wrote in his journal. I didn't think she was that pretty or anything. Now I can't take my eyes off her. In 2002, Josh and Susan Powell were kicked out of the apartment they had rented in Tacoma. They moved into Steve Powell's home in South Hill, Washington. The close proximity inflamed Steve's infatuation with Susan, stoking the embers into outright obsession. Steve began following Susan around the house, camera in hand. Steve Powell's journals revealed even more troubling behaviors. He stole Susan Cox Powell's soiled underwear from her laundry basket, replacing the pilfered pieces with duplicates. Steve even used a small mirror to spy on Susan when she used the bathroom. Steve collected Susan's soiled hygiene products from the trash, placing them in plastic baggies that he marked with the date. His journals revealed he recognized this behavior as aberrant. Steve expressed a desire to have Susan for himself. He recounted explicit daydreams focused on his son's wife. He yearned for them to divorce. It's very problematic to be madly in love with your son's wife, Steve wrote on February 24, 2003. I am so madly in love with Susan that I would do something desperate to have her. Susan Powell was a counselor and encouraged Josh Powell to join her, an offer he most often refused. On one occasion, Susan's father, Chuck Cox, attended a session. The counselor observed that Susan was being abused. Chuck told his daughter he agreed. Susan's parents bought her a cell phone in case she ever needed to make a quick escape. They paid the monthly bill to prevent Josh from seeing who she called or texted. Susan opened up to neighbors, relatives, and even the occasional stranger about her troubles. She vented about her husband, how poorly he treated her, and how much she yearned for him to act more like the man she had married. On Friday, June 27, 2008, Susan Powell asked her close friend and neighbor, Kersey Helwell, to come over to the Powell family's home. Susan handed Kersey a stereographer's notebook. Susan then began to recount the worst argument of her marriage to date. She and Josh had just gone through a shouting match over faith and finances. She was just pacing up and down and really angry, Helwell said. So angry she couldn't sit still. Susan said the argument rocked her so deeply she felt she needed to document it as evidence. The next day, Susan drafted a handwritten will while at work. In it, she spelled out a fear for her life. If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one, she wrote. Take care of my boys. Josh had purchased a $1 million term life insurance policy for her. Susan recognized the purchase made little sense, unless he expected something horrible to happen.
On the way over here, I actually did call my attorneys, and they said I should definitely have an attorney.
What's that?
I called my attorneys, which is prepaid legal.
Okay.
And they said that I should definitely have an attorney.
If I didn't read you your Miranda rights, have I?
That's what they said.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then, okay? Do you feel like you're under arrest?
I don't know. I didn't even think it was that. It didn't even sink in yesterday. But I don't know where she's at, and she ain't back yet.
Okay. Okay. So you don't know if you don't know if you feel like you're under arrest or not.
Josh Powell had gone for an unexpected winter camping trip. When Josh returned home with his 2 sons on the afternoon of Monday, December 7, 2009, he found a detective waiting for him. Debbie Caldwell, the Powell family's daycare provider, had sounded the alarm that morning when the boys, Charlie and Braden, failed to arrive at her home as scheduled. Police learned neither Josh nor Susan had shown up for their shifts at work. Calls to both of their cell phones had gone straight to voicemail. Officers feared the whole family might have been overcome by carbon monoxide gas. They had broken a window to gain access to their home. Officers found no sign of a struggle. They noticed the family's minivan was missing from the garage, and Susan's purse was sitting on the dresser. In the living room, 2 box fans were blowing air at a damp spot on the couch. It appeared as though the couch had recently been cleaned. When the investigators sprayed a product called Blue Star Forensic on the couch, which can reveal the presence of bloodstains, even many that are not visible to the naked eye. A small swipe mark glowed blue on the headrest of the couch. DNA testing later confirmed the blood had come from Susan Powell. Josh said he had left his home between 1:30 and 2 a.m. that morning, driving his minivan down the Pony Express Trail. Josh said he had pulled off to the south side of the dirt road and made camp at about 4 a.m. He had slept until about 7 a.m., then woke up and started a fire to make s'mores with Charlie and Braden. That's when he said he had realized it was Monday, not Sunday, and that he had missed work. Instead of rushing home to beg forgiveness, he had wandered all over the place with the boys. Josh Powell told Detective Ellis that he had stopped to wash his minivan at a car wash on the way home from the camping trip. Josh Powell's story seemed a poor alibi. After all, what father takes his 2- and 4-year-old children out of bed at 2 a.m. to go camping in sub-freezing cold? While Josh was getting investigated, another detective had Josh's boys, Charlie and Braden. During a forensic interview, Charlie Powell told another detective that his mom had gone camping with them, but stayed behind in the place with the flowers and pretty crystals. This case took a tragic turn on February 5, 2012, when Josh Powell committed murder-suicide. He had set his house on fire, killing himself and his 2 sons during a supervised visit.
2 little boys in the house, and they're 5 and 7, and there's an adult man. He had supervised visitation, and he blew up the house and the kids.
Till this day, investigators continue to search for answers, conducting extensive searches in remote areas where Josh might have disposed of Susan's body, with theories ranging from her body being buried in Utah desert to being hidden in an undisclosed location by Josh before his death. However, no trace of Susan is ever found. And just when you think Susan Powell's case couldn't get any more mysterious, let's dive into another chilling case that will leave you questioning everything. On March 24, 1998, a family trip aboard a Caribbean cruise ship seemed like a great idea. Ron and Iva Bradley, along with their 2 grown children, Amy and Brad, were not able to enjoy the trip for long. Just a few days into their vacation, around 6 a.m., Amy, went missing. A frantic search by the family found no trace of her. The cruise line would offer little assistance. Has she been kidnapped? Was she thrown overboard? Where is Amy Lynn Bradley? Amy Bradley was an all-American girl. She was pretty, outgoing, and athletic. And even though Amy was a strong swimmer and a trained lifeguard, she was terrified of the open ocean. According to Amy's mother, Iva Bradley, Amy had to be persuaded to join her family on the Caribbean cruise ship, Rhapsody of the Seas. She had just graduated, and this was supposed to be a celebratory vacation. Amy managed to put her fears aside, and at last chose the cruise life that offered plenty of distractions. On their third night at sea, Amy and her brother Brad partied long and hard at the ship's nightclub. Brad retired to the family cabin around 3:35 a.m., which was recorded by the ship's computerized door lock system. 5 minutes later, Amy followed him back, where Brad says he and his sister then sat on the balcony to talk before he went to sleep. Amy's dad, Ron, said he woke up when she came in and said she was going to sleep on the balcony because she hadn't been feeling too well because of the motion of the boat since they had left Aruba that evening. The next time Ron woke up, Brad had gone to bed and Amy was asleep on the balcony. He could see Amy's legs from her hips down. She looked like she was resting comfortably, so he dozed back off to sleep. The balcony door was closed because Ron said if it hadn't been closed, I would have gotten up and closed it. Just 30 minutes later, their dream vacation turned into a nightmare. As Ron said, about 6 o'clock a.m., something woke me up again. I got up, looked out the balcony, and the balcony door was open, about 14 to 16 inches, and Amy wasn't on the deck. And I had a little funny feeling at that time because it was unlike her to be up that early in the morning. According to him, it wasn't typical of Amy's behavior to go somewhere without telling someone. Ron searched the cruise's common areas for his daughter before waking up his family at 6:30 a.m. to tell them the news. Amy was gone. Amy's family says the ship's crew resisted paging Amy, claiming it was too early to use the loudspeakers. And to make things worse, the ship had just docked in the port of Curacao. The Bradleys claimed the purser didn't broadcast the first page for Amy until 10 minutes to 8 a.m. By then, Amy's mother said most of the passengers had disembarked for the day. Finally, the captain ordered a search. Officials claimed they combed through all 10 decks, all 999 rooms, and found nothing. A 3-day search of the ocean also failed to turn up any trace of Amy. The official conclusion: Amy may have fallen overboard or even jumped. The Bradleys began to piece together Amy's last hours on board the ship. She left the balcony between 5:30 and 6 o'clock a.m. They know she changed her clothes. They know she took her cigarettes and lighter, but they didn't know where she was going. And then they found a witness. Crystal Roberts said she saw Amy early that morning with the bass player from the ship's band. Others claimed that they had seen the bass player flirting with Amy the night before. Authorities never found any evidence that the bass player was involved with Amy's disappearance. Then, according to Steve Reeves, the editor of a cruise line trade publication, a disturbing new theory emerged. There's rumor and legend surrounding slavery in the Southern Caribbean. It's not uncommon knowledge in the maritime community that young white women are considered to be very desirable to foreign procurers. Amy's mother believed her daughter was a perfect target. To this day, Amy Lynn Bradley's whereabouts remain unknown. However, there have been multiple potential sightings of her in the years since, leading to a belief that on that fateful morning, Amy was taken to be sold into human trafficking. On March 24, 2010, 12 years after her disappearance, Amy Lynn Bradley was declared legally dead. With no verified witnesses and no remains found, the truth is still uncertain. Currently, to this day, the FBI and the Bradley family is offering a huge lump sum of money for any information that could lead to closure in Amy's case and to her safe return. But the mysteries don't end there. Next, let's uncover Mara Murray's spine-chilling disappearance. On February 9, 2004, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst had left campus earlier that day without telling anyone that she was going to New Hampshire. The 21-year-old Mara Murray vanished in Haverhill that evening, and she was never seen again. Born on May 4, 1982, in Massachusetts, Mara Murray was raised in the nearby town of Hanson. She was often described as an overachiever from a young age. 3 months before her disappearance, Mara Murray was arrested for using a stolen credit card number, but that charge was supposed to be dismissed as long as she maintained good behavior for 3 months. And on February 5, 2004, Murray had an emotional phone conversation with her sister Kathleen, who was struggling with addiction and issues with her fiance. At the time, Murray was at her campus security job and was so distraught by the call that she had to be escorted back to her dorm. This was just 4 days before Murray vanished. Murray's father, Fred, traveled to Amherst on February 7, 2004. He said that he went car shopping with his daughter and went to dinner with her before he went back to his motel. He then lent Murray his car so she could drive back to her dorm for a party that night. But on her way back in the wee hours of the next morning, she crashed her father's car into a guardrail. Though Murray was unharmed, the car was seriously damaged. However, Fred soon found out that his insurance would cover the cost of repairs as long as Murray picked up the proper forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. But the next morning, on February 9, 2004, everything changed. Murray emailed her professors to say that she would be taking a week off due to a death in the family. Her relatives later said there was no death. She also emailed her boyfriend, Bill Rausch. "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call you today though. Love you, Mara." Murray called the owner of a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where she had stayed before with her family, but she didn't reserve a room. She also called a booking hotline for hotels in Stowe, Vermont, but again, did not reserve a room. By that point, she had also used the internet to look up directions to Burlington, Vermont. It's unclear what her planned destination was meant to be, because she didn't tell anyone where she was going. Around 3:15 p.m., Murray drove to an off-campus ATM and withdrew $280. She then went to a liquor store and purchased about $40 worth of alcohol, including Bailey's, Kahlua, and boxed wine. She also stopped by the Registry of Motor Vehicles and picked up the forms for her car accident. At 4:37 p.m., she placed a call to her own voicemail. It was the last recorded instance that she ever used her phone. At 7:27 p.m. on February 9, 2004, a woman named Faith Westman called the police in Haverhill, New Hampshire, to report a car accident on Route 112. A black Saturn appeared to be stuck in a ditch near her home. The dispatcher thanked her for calling and sent out an officer. By 7:42 p.m., authorities had received another phone call about the accident, this time from a bus driver named Butch Atwood. He reported that the driver was a young woman who appeared to be shaken up, but unharmed. Atwood said that he had offered to call the cops at the scene of the crash, but the woman claimed that she had already called roadside assistance. Still, Atwood called the police anyway once he arrived home, about 100 yards away from the accident. At 7:46 p.m., the first responding officer arrived on the scene, but the mysterious young woman was nowhere to be found. The first officer on the scene found a damaged car, but no driver. The vehicle was locked and the airbags had been deployed. The cop who wrote up the report said, "Evidence at the scene indicated the vehicle had been eastbound and had gone off the roadway, struck some trees, spun around, and came to a rest facing the wrong way in the eastbound lane." The officer continued, "In plain sight behind the driver's seat of the vehicle, I could see a box of Franzia wine. I could also see red liquid on the driver's side door and ceiling of the car. In addition, the cop discovered a Coke bottle that contained a red liquid with a strong alcoholic odor. And there were also printed MapQuest directions to Burlington, Vermont. There were no obvious signs of foul play, and there were no footprints in the snow that led into the nearby woods. So the officer first asked Atwood, the last known person to speak with Murray, to give him a hand with the search. Eventually, a state trooper showed up, followed by firefighters in an emergency medical service. While they began combing the area west of the scene, it's believed that no one went east during the initial search. This was one of many things that Murray's father, Fred, who was only informed about his missing daughter 24 hours after the crash, would criticize about how the police handled the search. Police also believe that Murray may have been trying to kill herself, and even put out a press release 2 days after she first went missing that she was possibly suicidal. Her father has denied this suggestion. She was in good spirits and had no worries or reason to run away from her life. A search of her dorm room revealed that she had packed up most of her belongings into boxes before she left. Atop one of the boxes was a printed email to her boyfriend, which detailed problems in their relationship. While Murray had left some of her belongings in her car, a few key items were missing, including her cell phone and backpack. However, her phone was never used again. Any bank account associated with her has remained dormant. And ever since Maura Murray's disappearance in 2004, only alleged sightings, dead ends, and speculative theories have emerged. But for all the theories, we are no closer to finding out what happened to Maura Murray today than we were nearly 2 decades ago. Considering her slim chances of survival, there have been multiple efforts to recover her remains near the scene of the accident, but these have all led to dead ends.